For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can see this man's face, but those that are listening on the podcast, let me just describe it to you. It looks to be an individual who is presumably not white, wearing a Trump hat, a MAGA hat, with half his face swollen and purple, and his eye is completely bloodshot and almost black. This is a man who says that he was attacked for wearing a MAGA hat by a group of young people who were yelling things like F Trump and things like that. In response to the news, we saw a lot of people on Twitter praising it. This is the story from Pluralist. Liberals say man brutally beaten for wearing MAGA hat deserved it. He shouldn't dress that way. Well, what can you expect from Twitter? Now let me just point one thing out. People like this exist, cheering on the insanity. And you may say, but these people are crazy and we shouldn't pay attention to them. Fine. The only problem is you have people like Sean King with 1 million followers cheering on what happened in Tacoma with the guy who showed up with the firebombs. I'm going to be a little light on details for the sake of, I don't want to rehash the story because if you should know, check it out. A guy showed up to a facility in Tacoma. We don't need to repeat that. I want to talk about this. Now, this guy owns an art gallery, it's my understanding. Again, he doesn't look white as far as I can tell. And he says that he was attacked for wearing the MAGA hat. He says, so we don't really know, but he did say he called the police. I don't think this guy is lying for a few reasons. We've seen attacks like this happening all the time. There's hundreds of incidents in the past couple of years where people are being harassed, threatened, and attacked for wearing Trump hats. So yeah, I can't say I'm surprised it happened again. And Occam's razor, the simple solution is it's just another story of a guy getting attacked for wearing a MAGA hat. Here's what I find interesting, okay? When we go to a website like Pluralist, which does talk about culture war issues, when you go, The Hill covered it, I believe. Now, you can go to some mainstream, more centrist sites that are going to be like, oh, this is really interesting. We should report this because here's a guy who was attacked for wearing a Trump hat who may have permanent eye damage after had his face slammed to a pole or something. They said he was beaten by a group of teens enraged by his hat. Interestingly, though, I decided to check the front page of the Huffington Post to see what they were talking about. And I don't see the story. I'm not saying they didn't cover it. It's just not a high priority for them. For Pluralist, it's front page. And there are other websites where they're showing this story. I'm not saying it's like the biggest story in the world. It's not, the centerpiece. But you'd think it would at least be in the side column or something. Instead, I see people tweeting this story. And they're complaining because someone at a Trump rally looked at the journalists and then made a line across their neck. That's what they're freaking out about. That's what I'm seeing on Twitter. They're saying, oh no, Trump supporters are threatening the press again. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a crazy person. That's bad too, right? Don't do that. Don't show up to an event, look at the press, and do something ridiculous, like, a line across the throat. That's not smart, okay? So I can condemn that, and I think we can all recognize there should be some, proper behavior. I get people are mad, but a line across the throat while looking at journalists may be crossing that line, don't you think? I certainly do. But let's be real. Yes, we can condemn that kind of bad behavior, but shouldn't we put the bigger fire out first? Here's the way I think it should be appropriately covered. Hey, this is a guy who was physically attacked who may have permanent damage in his eye. He's clearly not white. He was just wearing a hat. That's incredibly wrong. I recognize your story about the guy at the Trump rally. I think that's wrong too. It's just not as big of a deal, but I will address it and will criticize it. That's fair, right? It's not like just because he got attacked, the other thing is okay, or vice versa. But certainly we can talk about both of these things. But that's not what we see. I think it's fair to point out for the Trump supporters who are alarmed by this, not talking about the guy at the Trump rally putting a line over his throat makes sense. A guy may have permanent eye damage for wearing a Trump hat. But for the people who are concerned about the guy with a line over the throat not talking about this at all is kind of weird to me. But I get it. I've shown this chart before. Moderates get most of their news from liberal sources, but more than half from conservative sources. Conservatives get about 60% from conservative sources and 35% from liberal sources. And I don't know what that other percentage is. Liberals, 95% of their news comes from liberal sources. So they don't see these stories. They don't care. And then and what's really irksome about this whole thing is we constantly hear from the far left, we're defending ourselves. And the narrative works. The propaganda works. It's insane. You go on Reddit and you go to r/politics and they'll say why is the media even talking about Antifa? Self-defense? Really? Take a look at what happened. And then they'll put the fake narrative where it's Antifa came out to defend themselves against violent right-wingers. And it's that doesn't happen though. But they'll show a clip of the Proud Boys punching someone and claim the Proud Boys started it. Look at this story. Like, you're gonna tell me that this guy is I'm sorry, I'm not gonna believe it, because we have like over 800 documented instances where people wear Trump hats and get attacked. Isn't it weird that they'll call me right wing for pointing out you shouldn't hit someone who's wearing a hat? Isn't it weird that we're at a point now where I can say straight up, hey man, I may disagree with you on a lot of political issues, but it was wrong of them to attack you. And I also think it was wrong of the guy to draw a line on his throat, but I recognize this is substantially worse. Nope. Far right. You're far right for daring say don't beat people up. They have the narrative persists on the left that all Trump supporters are, the brown shirts or whatever it's called, but this is just some guy who owns an art gallery. He lives in New York City. Well, let's read a little bit of the story so we can get some more context. They say, actually, before we dive in, I should definitely do this. Check out timcast.com/donate if you want to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. But the best thing you can do is share this video, because YouTube has deranked independent political commentary. I really do mean it. Don't worry about donating or whatever if you can't, but YouTube doesn't put me in the suggestions anymore. A lot of people keep emailing me saying, you are recommended, Tim. I'm not talking about recommendations. I'm talking about the fact that YouTube has basically shut down a non-subscriber suggestions. It's a specific thing. They're deranking us and propping up CNN so that in the long run, corporate media works and independent media slowly disappears, which means we can still fight back if you share my content. Or don't. You don't have to, but let's read. They say Jahangir Turin, doesn't sound like a white guy to me, 42, told local outlet Fox 5 NY that a group of 15 kids viciously stomped him, smashed his face into a scaffold, and shouted F Trump after spotting him walking down the street while wearing a MAGA hat. Turin had purchased the cap, indicative of his support of President Donald Trump, at Trump Tower earlier in the day. His injuries, a cheek fracture and badly swollen eye, were severe enough that Turin said he is seeing an eye specialist to determine if he suffered permanent damage to his sight. During a Thursday press conference, Turin called on the New York City Police Department to track down the individuals responsible. Sounds like this guy's telling the truth if he's going to hold a press conference and call in the police. But hey, I always reserve the right to reserve doubt or whatever, because it's politics, man. I certainly think there's the overwhelming likelihood is this guy was attacked. Pics or it didn't happen, right? If footage comes out, if there's proof. But for the time being, I doubt he's lying to the police. But I will stress, I don't care what your political faction is. We have seen far too many hoaxes, right? While the hoaxes have almost entirely been people on the left, hey man, I want proof. I'm going to need proof. I'll condemn what happened. When Justice Smollett's story came out, I condemned that and said, let's see the proof. I'll say the same thing to this. But stressing, we have hundreds of incidents where people have been attacked for wearing these hats. So, we'll see how these things develop. But hey, man, don't be surprised if eventually someone puts on a MAGA hat, claims to have been attacked, and it turns out to be fake. Because you've got crazy people. But I'm going to just say, I've seen enough videos of this to where I'll lean towards trusting this guy. But I'm not going to fall for any tricks. You know what I mean? Justice Smollett was a huge thing. And while many people are going to say, but Tim, that was the left, I get it. I do, but I still think it would be prudent to wait for proof. They say Jahangir Turin was asking for it, Trump critics claim. Commenters on social media were divided. While some Twitter users were appalled, others appeared to condone the violent act on the basis of the MAGA hat's alleged status as a hate symbol. Everyone should know that hat represents hate and bigotry. If you want to show off that you support that bigot, expect plenty of negative reaction. Another user opined that the hat is divisive, and since Turin chose to get the hat in the first place, he should accept the consequences of his choice to possibly provoke others. Isn't it funny? Okay, outside of that story, let's look at that comment. Isn't it funny how, if a woman wears a short skirt, they say, just because someone's wearing something, right, we all get it. It's hypocrisy. It's a double standard. This, to me, is a good example of principle versus tribe. For me, I act on principle, which means, yeah, if a woman is wearing a short skirt and a guy, assaults her, that's wrong. She's not asking for it. If a dude puts on a MAGA hat and they beat the crap out of him, that's assault. He's not asking for it. You're allowed to wear what you want to wear. I don't care if you dress up like a banana and walk down the street. I don't care if you dress up like a clown and you juggle bananas walking down the street. Just don't throw those bananas at people and we're all good. That's typically how I frame it. Meaning, you can wear whatever you want and no one has a right to violate your rights and your autonomy. It doesn't matter if you're a man, woman, Trump supporter, anti-Trump hater. There was a woman in the UK who stabbed the Trump baby balloon. Absolutely wrong to do. They have a right to have their balloon, silly as it may be. You may dislike it, but hey, it's their balloon. Let them do their thing. You know what? When that lady popped that balloon, it just made Trump's supporters look bad. Even if that woman wasn't even American, it was in the UK, I think. It's you've got to respect property rights and you've got to stand on principle. Admittedly, I'll tell you this. It's much more difficult to be a principled individual than it is to be a tribalist. Because when you're acting on principle, you're at a disadvantage. Tribalists can cheat. They can claim to be for one thing and then totally move against that. This next tweet says, I don't condone violence, but maybe not wear a Klan hat. Look, when you are inundated with fake news about something, it's still not an excuse to attack some little old guy who I guess his name sounds Indian, owns an art gallery. So we have this one, this tweet says, well, Jussie Smollett and Erica Thomas got 24/7 TV coverage for their made-up anti-Trump hoaxes. Trump supporters are actually being physically assaulted for wearing MAGA hats. Crickets from CNN, MSNBC, Good Morning America, and other news networks. These are hate crimes. In D.C., they would be. But let's point this out. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be like on the left saying, he's lying, he's faking it. Fine, whatever, don't care. I haven't seen proof, so I'll reserve judgment, but I lean towards it probably happened, right? Now, Jussie Smollett, Erica Thomas, viral trends, wall-to-wall news coverage, and what do I see on Twitter? A person at a Trump rally drew a line on their neck. Okay, this is the game, okay? You conservatives, you are not part of what these people care about. Brands, they don't care about you. And that means when you're physically attacked, they'll turn a blind eye. It means when an Antifa guy shows up to a federal facility in ICE with firebombs, they will turn a blind eye. In fact, Sean King will praise and support it. So you know what? They call that far right. Saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't have violence and we shouldn't be beating innocent people for the clothes they wear. They call that far right. Well, here's what you can expect. You can expect to be attacked. You can expect they won't find who did it. You can expect to be put in a position like Andy Ngo, where you're brutally beaten in broad daylight, surrounded by people, all on camera, and the police will not find or stop these people. You can be this man with permanent eye damage, and the media will do nothing for you. They won't condemn it. They'll excuse it. Now, some people did come out after Andy Ngo was attacked. Fine. But what was the initial reaction? Excuses. Well, he's a grifter, so he deserved it. Yep. You will not get equal treatment. These people do not have standards. In fact, if, as the saying goes, if they didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all. But they really don't. And therein lies the problem with the mainstream left. I believe, based on the data I've read, the majority of liberals are called the exhausted majority, and they're passive and traditional liberals. I think Andrew Breitbart called them default liberal, meaning they're not really politically engaged, they just vote for Democrats. I believe he was correct in his assessment. And then you have the far left weirdos who get a free pass for whatever reason. According to Hidden Tribes, there are two wings. There's the left and the right. The left wing is primarily progressive activists, and the right is traditional and devout conservatives. Everyone in between is considered the exhausted majority. This is the More in Common Hidden Tribes report. That says to me that liberals in this country just don't pay attention. So when you get the activist left working in media, they're not going to tell the uninitiated default liberals that this happened. And thus, the narrative persists that the right wing is the worst. That's the game they play on purpose. And it's going to be dangerous, and it's going to result in really, really negative consequences. Because I'll tell you this, social media has empowered channels like mine. Social media has empowered individuals to speak up and share this news. And the internet itself is allowing us to bypass corporate media, and Trump exploits this to no end. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, he knows he has a direct pipeline to his base, to the American people, and the media, they don't like it. They want to make sure this story doesn't get out. Well, I'm going to talk about it because attacking someone is wrong. You want to talk to the guy and have a conversation? By all means. You want to yell at him, insult him, call him the worst names in the book? You have my blessing to do so. That's America. Just don't cross the line into harassment and legal issues, but you're allowed to protest and shout and scream and all day and night. But when you cross that line and violate someone's rights and physically attack them, well, now I've got a serious problem. And the media isn't calling it out. The police aren't doing enough. And I truly fear the real outcome from this is going to be authoritarianism. Because I look at this and I say, we're going to get to a point where Antifa runs so wild that there's going to be demands that police take action. And then we're going to see an escalation in an already militarizing police force. But what do you do when this keeps happening and the police seemingly aren't stopping it? I honestly don't know. I really, really don't. The last thing I want to see is more heavy-handed policing. I've been victim to police lying and falsely accusing me. It's happened to me. I'm not saying all cops are bad. I'm not playing that game. No, just I've had bad run-ins with police, and I've had run-ins with cronies in the police department, and so not good experiences, right? I think we should have a more free society, and police should be held to a higher standard. But if this doesn't stop, I assure you, those passive liberals will eventually beg the government for more, to give them more authority to take action against extremists, and that will just be bad for everybody in the long run. If the police can keep it to stopping the violence, we're fine. But I'm already concerned about the overreach of government and the way, we've seen the intelligence agencies work with spying, NSA, FBI, the whole game. The last thing I want is ever to advocate for more of that. But don't be surprised when you see a wave of people saying, please save us, and voting for more authority for the police and things, and the executive branch because of this. Because innocent people are being attacked and nothing is being done to stop it. So I'll leave it there. You get the point. Stick around. Next segment will be coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.